I don't even know how to start this shit. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host, who is incredibly shocked. And today, on yet another special episode of John's Perspective, I am going to be covering the ongoing, TBD on that, Kendrick Lamar-Drake beef. In a previous video, I went over the push-ups and Euphoria diss tracks and my respective takes on each, as well as who I thought should be the round one winner, which in this case was Kendrick Lamar. But things have escalated quite a bit since we last covered this, so I don't even think you can break this shit into rounds now. On what will be looked at as one of the greatest days in hip-hop history, bright and early, Kendrick dropped 616 in LA, a decidedly much lower key diss track that doesn't have as much fanfare as what came before and certainly what would come after. The title has been tirelessly analyzed through and through as a multi-pronged metaphor, and even the production nod seems to take a hit at Drake for his mentioning of working with Taylor Swift, going at Drake psychologically without giving it too much of a vigorous punch. However, it still deserves a commendation for serving as a prelude to the ensuing back and forth, where Kendrick implies that Drake has snakes in his camp at OVO feeding him information, which will definitely be important later. The track presents itself as a warning shot, but we all knew that Drake would have to respond to Euphoria, and he did, probably in the best possible way that he could with Family Matters. But not even an hour after, Kendrick shocked the world again with the surprise release of Meet the Grams, countering Drake right away. And shit got really personal this time, as expected. Excluding 616 in LA since it kind of serves as a calm before the storm, I wanted to rate the two that dropped on Friday night and Not Like Us, which dropped on Saturday night, just to speak on the implications of each one and how that actually might affect the beef moving forward if there even is one anymore. But enough of me. It's time to assess the wreckage.
Why you never hold your son and tell him say cheese? We could have left the kids out of this, don't blame me. You a dog.
Damn it if Drake didn't give us one of the best diss tracks of his career here. Clocking in at 7 minutes, Drake has 3 beats to work with here, fulfilling the 3 switches that Kendrick was taunting him with on Like That. The first movement really doesn't have the same visceral energy that Push-Ups had, coming off as more of a usual Drake club track. He hits back at Kendrick's mention of the $500K sexual assault settlement, and overall it's a bit of a muddy response that's a little half-hearted. Then he drops a pretty questionable line about Kendrick's empowerment-focused content in his songs, signifying that Kendrick's altruistic persona is hollower than it seems, even going as far to falsely state later that Kendrick doesn't give back to his hometown. Just another reason to inquire about Drake's credibility on these issues. However, this is a fascinating bar because it highlights something that Kendrick has been criticized about in the rap community and music in general, which is his moral grandstanding. Drake doesn't hit on this as much as he should have, in my opinion, since this is where Kendrick can be seen as a phony, depending on who you ask. The major blows that Drake deals here to Kendrick in part 1 here, though, expertly point out Kendrick's insecurities and self-esteem issues in light of Kendrick's own revelations of his infidelity in Mr. Morale. But Drake goes a step further, implying that Kendrick isn't locking down his relationship with his longtime partner due to a rumor that Dave Free, a creative partner of Kendrick's for over a decade, is the father of one of his children. Drake peddles this factoid in a condescending, almost playful manner, again making us question the validity of the claim, but the claim itself does make your skin crawl a bit. The shake that ass bitch, hands on your knees refrain is hilarious, poking fun at Kendrick's sexy red adjacent bars. But part 2 is where I think Drake goes off the rails a bit in a bad way, reigniting the discourse around the 20v1 when it's really not supposed to be about that right now. The tea surrounding his beefs with The Weeknd, Rick Ross, A$AP Rocky, Future, and Metro are just not attention-grabbing, although the disses on there are brutal. The problem is, this is not about them. This is about Kendrick and Drake. Part 3 circles back to Kendrick and highlights Kendrick for his Grammy darling status, which is interesting given Drake's history with the Grammys. But the last line is where things get really sticky. Drake makes the claim outright that Kendrick is a domestic abuser and that his camp cleaned the story up to maintain his image. If Kendrick were to address anything here as a falsehood, and again, it's hard to believe Drake because he has a history of lying, this would be the one to respond to, because if true, this is something that could damage Kendrick Lamar's public image immensely. Ending on that cliffhanger gives Drake a lot of juice and leverage here, and though this didn't hit as well for me as Push-Ups did, since Drake's third act flows feel uninspired and repetitive, lacking spirit and overall liveliness, it's a hard-hitting diss track nonetheless. But that's just about where the positives for Drake end here.
I'm sorry that you gotta grow up and then stand behind them. Life is hard, I know. The challenge is always go beat us home.
Wow. damn. This is one of the greatest diss tracks in the history of hip-hop, and it makes you sick to your stomach. Evidently, this track was years in the making, and it must have been planned to release in case Drake pushed the red button, i.e. the family button, but that doesn't take away from the abundance of vitriol Kendrick directs Drake's way on this track. The structure that Kendrick takes on here directly addresses Drake's family members, including his son, his mother and father, and a daughter that we didn't know about. Yes, Drake hit another child, and Drake himself. And the tone of the track, especially the trickling keys and the overall production atmosphere established by The Alchemist, is deeply troubling and sinister. Kendrick ditches the lyrical gymnastics of Euphoria and just goes straight for Drake's head, starting by speaking directly to Adonis and criticizing Drake for his parenting, even going as far to state that Drake shouldn't have been born. He mentioned something pretty gross that Meek Mill alleged in 2015 on Wanna Know, discusses Drake paying for sex, and revives claims about Drake using Ozempic. It's light but effective, and it's kind of interesting how Ozempic has been getting a lot of shoutouts during this beef. The second verse addresses Drake's mother, and this is where the diss gets very real very fast. Kendrick speaks directly to her about her son's misogynistic treatment of women, then shifts the blame onto Drake's father, claiming that Drake used his name to achieve this status in the entertainment industry. But that's where Kendrick deals one of the heaviest blows in this beef yet, boldly declaring that men like Drake and Harvey Weinstein shouldn't exist anymore. To put it lightly, he states outright to Drake's mother that men like him should be locked up for being in league with sex offenders, even noting that Drake has sex offenders on his payroll. The spiral from here is sickening, where Kendrick likens listening to Drake as a means of funding sex trafficking. I'm not going to get too in the weeds on this because it does feature very heavy content, and if true, this is obviously disgusting. However, it is still unverified, but since Kendrick claims he has a leaker in Drake's camp, these allegations seem like they could be corroborated. Then there's the surprise verse where Kendrick reveals that Drake has the thought-to-be 11-year-old daughter. And this was a bombshell revelation, but I don't think the focus should be on the revelation. Kendrick makes it very clear that the sins of the father inform the worldview of the child, which can then lead to a very dark path. He blames Dennis, Drake's father, for his sins passing on to Drake, and shows this level of support to this young girl in a fatherly way that's quite condescending to Drake, and in turn his entire family. It's really awkward to listen to, but it's supposed to be. And then last but not least, Kendrick's open letter to Drake could very well be the death blow. Kendrick plays on the idea that this could have been fun, but Drake involved his family, so Kendrick had to do what he had to do. He further damages Drake's credibility and believability by just flatly telling us everything he's lied about, while psychologically breaking down why. The running thread here is that Kendrick knows Drake to be someone that is desperate to be liked. So these falsehoods that Kendrick mentions are a means of Drake attaining cultural capital that he craves. I could get into the gambling addict, sex addict allegations, but it's not anything we already didn't know. It's just presented in a way that showcases Drake as completely pathetic, and I think that was Kendrick's goal because he completely succeeded. The last line, "fuck a rap battle, this a lifelong battle with yourself," really seals the deal, and if Kendrick ended it there, it would be really hard to come back from. But he didn't, because he went and made it even harder.
Any bitch that talk to him and they in love, just make sure you hide your little sister from him. They tell me Chubb's the only one that get your...
If Kendrick was criticized by the Drake fanbase over anything in this beef, it was over the opinion that he didn't craft any catchy club bangers that Drake did. And to be fair, the Drake tracks are extremely catchy and melodic. But Kendrick just couldn't even wait one day. Not like us arrive Saturday night with a cover art that is delightfully vicious and a mustard beat that is delightfully infectious. Pulling no punches though on such a bouncy beat, Kendrick keeps the content purely vile, referencing John Stockton, who played with Karl Malone on the Utah Jazz. And Malone is infamously known for impregnating a 13-year-old girl. Drake has a photo on IG with Karl Malone that has already been taken down, so yikes. As much fun as this track is, Kendrick still gives off a villainous energy, even referring to himself as the boogeyman, which is a title I believe he's earned at this point. He doubles down on the pedophilia claims in verse 2, which is one of the most cheerfully hateful verses in hip-hop history, where he notes Baca's 2014 forced prostitution case, and then hilariously states certified lover boy, certified pedophiles. Then he ends the verse with the funniest line of this beef so far, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor. Fuck, man. The third verse continues the allegations of Drake mistreating women, including Serena Williams, Lil Wayne's girl Tammy Torres, and he even pettily jokes about how he's glad that DeMar DeRozan left the Raptors because Drake didn't deserve him either. I'm fucking dead. This is just hilarious. The fourth verse really drives the stake into Drake's heart when it comes to his legitimacy as an artist, referring to him as a colonizer of the culture. Also, I gotta say, the 69 God, uhhhhh, he a fan line at the end of the song is probably the catchiest thing that's come out of this beef. Like, shit, I'm gonna be bumping this track all fucking summer because this is just amazing. So yeah, is this over? Apparently Kendrick's got more on the way, so no matter what Drake does in terms of a response, it seems like Kendrick is locked in and ready.
Hey, Editing John here. So apparently Drake dropped The Heart Part 6 after I filmed this, of course, because no one can just stop dropping music during this. And I think overall that this track is the worst effort Drake's brought forward so far. I'm not going to give it a crazy amount of thoughts right now or anything. I'll give it more attention if Kendrick has some kind of response, but really I think Drake's angle here and his I expected them to take the pedophile angle is a little weird, and him playing into online conspiracies and saying that he fed information, I don't know, he lacks credibility at this point in time, and he further proves that he just really doesn't have anything substantial to go at Kendrick with, except for this Dave Free thing that kind of came out of nowhere. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't think that this is going to continue any further. I think Drake kind of effectively bowed out here. So in that sense, I think it might be over, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right, that's all I have. See ya.
Then step this way, step that way, then